Well, thank you all so much for being here today. We've assembled quite the crew. Basically, how this worked out is Annemarie, we did a wedding together about a month ago with Jenny. Jenny and I and Annemarie had a wedding, and I said, we want to get Annemarie on one of these Best Made Weddings roundtables. And so I reached out to Annemarie. I said, what do you want to talk about? What do you think? This is kind of a timely podcast. We try to do this week to week. And Annemarie said, I kind of had this idea. We're kind of calling this Grieving Your Wedding, kind of accepting the changes that are going to be happening this year, going into next year, just kind of processing all that emotion. I do think this is going to be a little bit more higher level today in terms of, just the things we're talking about. And Annemarie said, I want to have Alan and Jenny on. And I said, well, then we're going to have Alan and Jenny on. And so this is where we're at. And so we're going to kind of let Annemarie, I think we kind of have an idea of what this is going to be, but we'll kind of feel this out together. But Alan, why don't you introduce yourself, and then Jenny, and then we'll have Annemarie introduce herself, and then we'll kind of get into this.
My name is Alan Chitlik, and my company is Puget Sound DJ, and I am excited for this opportunity.
And Jenny, how are you?
Best Made Weddings.
Oh, good. And Jenny, how are you doing today? You look great.
Thank you. I'm doing great. I'm Jenny GG of Jenny GG Photography.
And Annemarie, the person so awesome, you got to have your own podcast here. Who are you?
I'm in such esteemed company, Reed. Hello, Alan. Hello, Jenny. Hello, everybody. I'm Annemarie Juhlian, and I am a marrying lady, a wedding officiant here in the Seattle area.
So Jenny, so Annemarie, talk to me through, I reached out to you. I said, we want to do, what do you want to talk about? This podcast is for, wedding planning couples, also vendors, but a lot of people that are getting married, have gotten married, kind of a crazy time. So what kind of came to your head today about what we're going to talk about?
Well, I think that when we talked about the whole year of 2020, I think I'm really tired of people saying, you ask somebody how they're doing and they go, great, I'm doing great. And I'm not sure I believe them, because I think it's a really up and down process, particularly in the events industry, of which the wedding piece is a part of the events industry, which has just been really hit incredibly hard. And I think, like Alan and Jenny, and perhaps even you, Reed, we spent a lot of time postponing and canceling weddings. And Alan, we had this conversation a number of weeks ago about, what is the real health of 2020? What is the real health of 2021 when it comes to couples and their feelings, and how this impacts not only the wedding, but the potential marriage? Because this is a lot to navigate, the boatload of disappointment, the boatload of fracture. I have a number of couples that I just don't think are going to come together in 2021. And I just think there's a lot more going out there. And this is a sea of, we really don't know how to handle this. But there's a lot of conversation, and there's a lot of emotion and feeling out there. It's a very emotive time. And if we just pretend, let's just postpone it into 21, there's a lot more that goes with it.
Annemarie, and do me a favor, turn your microphone a little more out towards, there we go. And so obviously you work with a lot of couples, so what kinds of conversations are you having with them, and what kinds of things are you guys talking about?
Sure. A lot of the conversation happened in March and April and May, where we really thought, we were kind of naive. We really thought, these couples, as well as I did, that we could reschedule into July, August, September, into the fall. And so I am working with couples that not only have rescheduled once, we've rescheduled 2 times and 3 times. The interesting thing is that a number of these couples went ahead and got legally married in small ceremonies this summer. So it's going to be interesting to see if they still stay fully engaged, if it's important to them to have the larger celebration, or are they going to kind of redo it into a different way, perhaps a smaller celebration, not the 100, 150 guests, which even hell knows if we'll be able to have any number like that in 2021. There's just a lot going on. And a wedding is supposed to be in a normal whatever, is supposed to have kind of like this tapestry of steps, the engagement. And the steps have been blown up. And there's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of financial loss. There's a lot of like the tectonic plates in a relationship, the couples are having to negotiate ways that perhaps they're not accustomed to, that is about pain and loss and disappointment. And how do two people do this? It's a lot.
Alan, this kind of segues too into, Alan was just on actually the one that we just posted this week, talking about kind of saving the 2021 wedding. What are we going to do in terms of physically, like how are we actually going to plan this wedding? We got married this year. We're going to do a reception, a larger wedding, whatever, next year. And that was a little bit more, like I said, the physical planning. I think this today is going to be a little bit more about the mentality behind that, about kind of more of the I don't know if metaphysical is right. We're just kind of the what's going on in your head. Alan, what do you have to say about this? And then I want to touch in with Jenny too.
Well, I think that the key issue that Annemarie is bringing up is just the emotional challenge for any couple who has been envisioning their wedding and has had to go through this. I mean, it really can be perceived as a loss, and as painful for some people as a death in their family, right? Like, you've got this expectation of what your wedding is going to be. And in some cases, if you were getting married August 8th, you heard from the governor 10 days before, nope, you're not going to do that. And what strikes me about this is that many of these couples probably don't have peers that fully understand what's happening, because it's such a rare occurrence that so many weddings get postponed or canceled or split up, as we're seeing right now. And so the opportunities to have somebody who truly understands are kind of limited for some of these couples. And I would say in some cases, maybe they don't necessarily agree on how disappointed they should be. Maybe one person is like, okay, well, that's what we can do. And the other one is like, but this was my dream.
Jenny, what do you think about this? I know we had, I'm struggling right now. The couple that we had back on Whidbey Island, Kathy and Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And they had kind of gone through this too, where they were going to do a wedding, and you had been booked with them forever, right? I mean, I got brought in really last minute, but this was something that you had worked with them through a lot of this. And finally they just said, F it, we're going to do, and it was just us and Annemarie and them. And they just said, we got to do it. What was it like kind of going with them through all of this, as someone that had, I'm sure did check-ins a lot with them, kind of going through this whole process?
I mean, I think with that particular couple, they're still planning on having a party next year. They, just like Annemarie had mentioned, there are a lot of couples that decided that, okay, well, we can't do it the day that we wanted to do it, but maybe we'll still get married that day. And I've had a few like that where they still get married on the day that they planned on getting married, but they're going to party, next year. And I actually have a couple right now that they rescheduled back in, I want to say April for next year. But then as the year has gone and they've been seeing certain things open up, and like now you can have like 50 people now or something like that. And so they've decided to can the next year date, and they're going to bump it up and just go ahead and get married anyway in a much smaller situation. And so they've rescheduled twice, I guess, in that time frame. And we've been chatting a lot. And I will say there's an enormous amount of relief that seems to come from folks. That's sort of been the vibe. I had a wedding last weekend that canceled because one of the couple tested positive for COVID.
Yeah.
And while it was a horrible thing and, not part of the plan to have to cancel, there was something in the tone of her voice when we chatted that gave me the impression that on some level there was relief. I think because they work in the healthcare field and they've been seeing the COVID experience, right here. I think were really worried about being vectors or, giving it. And I think although they were really excited to get married and to have their loved ones, there was a lot of anxiety that was around that I felt, or that at least to me sounded like, even though she tested positive, there was a bit of relief in her voice.
Yeah, how crazy. I saw when you posted that, I was like, this is, to have it be right smack dab in front of you is, especially the bride,
Yeah. But I mean, I think they've been testing a lot because they work in healthcare. Both of them actually work in healthcare, but she just had negative tests all along. And I think she was just doing it for peace of mind. And then, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I actually answered your question.
That's okay. It did good. So Annemarie, how are we going to help? We see what's going on here. So how are we going to kind of work through this?
I think part of it is just getting real. For instance, I'm on a consultation with a couple the other night. They want to do 150 people in a closed space next August. And I'm just listening to this and I'm thinking, really? What's happening, I think, and I could be wrong, and Alan and Jenny, I've talked about this, is that we're going through a profound shift right now in terms of what is a wedding, how do we celebrate a wedding, and how many people do we have at this event. And I think right now, this whole COVID thing is going to shapeshift the landscape of what a wedding is. And it's going to be very different going forward. And I think 2021 is a complete crapshoot in terms of what's going to happen, how it's going to do, what's going to look like. I think, in my opinion, we can take a look at 22. And 22 seems to be, people can kind of wrap their arms and their hearts around 22. But 21, and I think...
Really?
Yeah, I think this is my opinion, and I could be totally crazy and totally wrong. But if we're in phase 3 or phase 2, what happens is that it gets very, very complicated in terms of people, and you've got couples out there who are juggling a lot. They've got jobs, they've got unemployment, they've got family members who can't come in. They're not going to put grandma on a plane. And I've had so many people say, if my grandmother or my grandfather can't be there, I'm not getting married. The emotional component to this isn't necessarily, logical. A wedding isn't logical. And it's emotive. It's this complete massive ritual of transition. It's so big, huge. As much as it is a celebration, it's the emotional pieces that go into saying, I'm going to choose to share my life with you. And they have it blown up. You have to put that back together and keep the focus on what is really, really important. And what's important is two people sharing their lives, figuring out a way that is going to be their story. And so going back to your point, Reed, is getting real for what is right for a couple and not thinking larger, but keeping it really contained and special and beautiful, because we don't know what's going to go on. What do you think, Jenny? What do you think 2021 is going to, what's your gut say?
Oh, it's not that I disagree. I just, I feel like things might shift definitely in terms of size.
Yeah.
Maybe scope.
Yeah.
But I mean, just in the few weddings that I've done this year, it's been lovely to see how many people will say to me, "I just want to get married."
Uh-huh.
Whether it's with Zoom or 5 people or whatever. That has been a lot of and maybe it's just because I come at them with such like, well, I can photograph anything if it's just 2 of us or if it's 200 of us, you know what I mean? Maybe it's the angle at which I come at. I don't usually come at couples with a lot of, it seems appropriate for an officiant to talk about the emotional component and to have that sort of therapeutic aspect in the planning, or a planner even maybe, like having this sort of emotional, I'm all about whatever is going to make you happy in that moment. That's what's going to make happy images. So if having grandma there is what's going to hinder this, then by all means, wait until grandma can come. But a lot of people really, at least from my experience so far, have just really wanted to get married regardless.
Right. And just one last point, COVID is totally an out of control experience. And so if a couple can kind of bring that control back and say, these are my choices. We're going to do this. I'm going to figure this out. This is going to happen. Then some semblance of understanding and control is kind of like a really beautiful medicine to say, we're going to do this and we're going to figure it out for us. Yeah.
No, but it's a great point to talk about. And this is interesting too, because Dorothy's good friend, they just got engaged last weekend. I'm missing my dates up, but they got engaged, and Dorothy and I were talking about it at brunch last weekend. I said, wouldn't know what the heck to do if I got engaged right now, because I certainly wouldn't want to plan something for April or May, right? This year, like coming up on whatever. And then if you're doing, June, July, August, you're running into still maybe COVID, and then also dealing with couples that are, postponing, and we're shifting this whole wedding industry, a year no matter what city you're in, right? You could be in Seattle or New York or wherever, right? We're all dealing with these postponements. And then I said, then if you're waiting to next year, that's a really long time to be engaged, to get engaged in, October, and then to plan it for almost 2 years. It's nuts too. I mean, I just don't even know where it kind of fits in. I don't know what I would do if I were them, if that makes sense. Alan, what do you think about all this?
Well, I think one of the big challenges is the uncertainty. No one knows what the summer of 2021 is going to be like. And if you did know that we were still going to be under restrictions, you have a better ability to emotionally prepare yourself for that. And then logistically, you have a better ability to say, I'm going to act this way. I'm going to have my ceremony at this time with this many people. I'm going to do this about my reception. But the challenge is, who knows? I've got a bunch of couples that are betting on 2021. I will share that I'm a big concert goer, and I had many concert tickets for the summer, and they literally all just went June 6th, 2020, June 7th, 2021. They just rescheduled for 1 year hence. And it's not clear to me what it's all going to be like. And I feel like we're at a big disadvantage. The couples here are at a big disadvantage in the Pacific Northwest, because so many of the weddings happen in that 15 weeks in July, August, and September. So if you're in Southern California, you can always just move 4 months out or 6 months out and 8 months out, and you're going to get to have the same wedding. Here, if you have August scheduled for 2021, and it still isn't going to happen for you, then you really do have to wait 11 or 12 months to get that wonderful, humid-free 70-degree day.
Well, that was like but I totally get what you mean. And Alan did our wedding. I mean, Dorothy was bound and determined to have an August wedding, and that's no jokes aside at all. We had talked about trying to do something off season just as a wedding vendor would have been really nice. And that was really important, but that was really important to her. And if that is important to you, which it is important to a lot of our couples to have those summer Saturdays, it's really, really tough. It was interesting that we just had our 10/10/2020, that was this last weekend. And to think of how long ago that Caitlin and Ben had booked me, and then to think of all the world that had changed between, I don't even know, 2 years, year and a half that they had booked to today. And then to think, it's just crazy. It's really a crazy time. And to think, that they went from having, and not that it was not still the wedding of their dreams, but it was a very definitely different idea than they had originally planned. Even though we did get married at their same venue, very, very small live stream. We were done at 5, mass, all distant, I mean, it was very, very, very different than it ever would have been. Annemarie, what do you think about all this?
I think it's a number of factors. And I think Alan and Jenny, you're absolutely spot on. And Reed, I totally agree with you on a lot of what you're saying. there's the emotional loss, and then there's the financial loss. And then there's other components. A lot of the couples that I married this summer are getting married for insurance. They're also getting married because they want to start a family. And they're really not sure what 21 is going to bring. And there's an emotional maturity that comes with absorbing disappointment and rewiring and reframing something. And when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're compared to a couple of decades older, the framework for understanding how to navigate that is different. And so the point was made that, I think, Alan, you made the point where two people really take a look at disappointment differently. And there's a real enchantment to say, you know what? Here's the deal. The wedding is important, but we're focused on the marriage. So if we look at both and we say, because a lot of these couples, as you well said, Jenny, they just want to get married. They want to start their lives. They do not want to be held hostage to, as you said, Alan, the uncertainty. So I feel like it's taking back control and saying, all right, how do we want to do this? How's this going to look? What is this going to be for us? And recognizing it's not about the number as much as it is just the opportunity to share with our best people. I've had some amazing weddings, and Jenny, you've been in a number of them where, they get 10 people, 20 people, 30 people. And right now in phase 2, we're at 30 people. Phase 3, we're at 50 people. I don't know.
We're not at 50 now?
It's 50. No, I believe it's 50 in phase 3. But it's 30 in phase 2.
They bumped 50 up, right, Alan? You.
No, I think it is still 30. There were people advocating for 50, but they didn't get it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought the last switch gave a bump up to whatever restaurants have or whatever.
Yeah, it's very complicated because Inslee, the guidance comes out really randomly, and we really don't know. But as far as I know right now, it's 30 for phase 2. It's 50 for phase 3.
Well, it's so interesting too, and I think it was the point that Jenny made, where the difference between kind of where we fit in versus an officiant or a planner, it could be two people on the side of a beach and we're there, and yeah. it's a wedding and we're capturing it, right? That it's about kind of meeting the couples where they want to be, but also reframing those expectations. I don't know. I mean, we're just because like you said, we could, like Kathy and Jeff, we're just there in the backyard and it's a wedding and we're done. And we've always said on the podcast, trying to get people to focus on what we can do versus what we can't do. And it's been a real struggle. It's been a real struggle, even with, couples that I've had of trying to push the rules and do this and do that. And I remember Alan and I talked back in March, I think. And I remember you said, if we are still in this, whatever, in August, I will be very afraid for what is going on just in our country and our world and our economy, just in everything. And here we are now in October, right? And we are still, in all that.
Well, before I came on this, as you well know, I was at the gym. I still am at the gym. And I was watching CNN, and the vaccine, it's constant conversation about, as you said, the unknown. We don't know anything. So try to plan something for 2021. There's a lot of trust, and you're going to have to be a Gumby. You're going to have to say, okay, we are going to embrace it. We're going to plan this for 2021. We're going to do it this way. And we also know that we may have to make some adjustments. But the reality is, if we're already at 30 people and 50 people, unless we have a big blow up, I think couples can count on those numbers. And those are really beautiful numbers of people for, a ceremony. And the vendors are here. We're all here. We want to just work, and we just want to celebrate and enjoy with these people, and, fairy dust them with all of our talents. I think it's going to be okay. My question is the disconnect for the larger weddings and couples who are coming to me and saying, yeah, we're going to have 150 people on this date in August. That I'm not sure about. That causes me concern.
Jenny, what kinds of, and if you are, but if you're booking couples into next year or talking with couples, what kinds of conversations are you guys having, and what are you, what kinds of things are you guys talking about right now?
Yeah, it seems like there's a presumption that there will be stronger direction from our state. There's a presumption that we'll know more then, kind of a thing. And it seems like if masks, just for example, if masks are now part of our norm, a vaccine's not going to change that. Especially, I mean, the reality of a vaccine and trickling down to common, just everyday folk. I don't think that's going to be anytime soon, and that brings up the whole conversation of who's actually going to take the vaccine and when and if, and all that, So, but it seems to me that the conversation is more, we're going to plan for what we hope. And then we're going to already have what I've been encouraging couples to do is have your B plan be like right here instead of your B plan being on the ground, because that's going to set you up for some massive disappointment. So if you just assume that there's going to be some consideration having to be put into place in regards to COVID, whether you're planning for 125 guests like you would normally have, maybe the plan is instead of worrying about the guest count, thinking more in terms of, am I in an environment where I can have my wedding outside if that's what I need to do? And if there's no mandates and I can have it indoors, then great, I can get, married in front of that fireplace I love, whatever, blah, blah, it seems like those are the things that need to be clicking. And where, as a photographer, I always suggest that we keep the B plan not too far from the A plan. I think that just has to come into play with the whole deal, and like even with like preparing when you're going to send out your paper products, you got to think like, okay, instead of doing it the way that dear Abby would have told you to do it back in the day or whatever, now we got to think in terms of COVID and what that looks like. So I also think this, as the streaming becomes more on lock and less foreign to folk, I think you'll probably start to see a lot more people being willing to let their grandma not physically be there because they're certain that their grandma can watch it or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's interesting to me, and something that I've noticed just with my own bookings in the last couple of weeks is I had a lot of May weddings in June, and they all pushed. It just happened that they all pushed all the Saturdays in November into December, whatever that was, the 9th and the 16th or whatever those dates were. And then a lot of my October weddings were always kind of booked because at least where we book, we kind of book until November. And then it's generally a hard stop just for video. We don't do a ton of off-season stuff. And what's been interesting to me that I've noticed is a lot of my October weddings have been really, really flexible, like our one on 10/10 and downsized. And we have one on the 24th and they have downsized. And the one on the 25th is a live stream. And they're in Indian, tons of their family is going to be in India watching all this remote stuff. But all of our November weddings, I think when they decided to make that push to November from May or whatever, in their head it was, we're doing the big wedding, we're pushing to November so we can do the big wedding. And now that we're getting close, they're all there's no downsizing. They're pushing again, which is just interesting to me because I thought, man, I don't know what our Novembers are going to do. And every single one of them's pushing it down the line now, which is obviously they're right. But I think, 9 months ago, they thought, or 6 months ago, there's no way in the world that we're not going to be able to have the wedding that we wanted in November. And, here we are, and it's still, basically the same regulations we've had for months, right?
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I've seen more, I don't know if it's because we've gotten deeper into this, but I've seen more couples have more of a almost attitude of, well, I'll let people decide what's best for them. Like, and not necessarily taking the full. I think initially a lot of people put it on themselves, like this is, I'm making the decision kind of a thing. And it seems like more and more people are saying, well, we're going to provide masks and we're going to provide all of this. But, and that's going to be an interesting twist. I see too, especially as these counties get in different. Once certain counties are in phase 4, I think it's going to be really easy for folks who are still in phase 2 to want to just do it as, initially planned or whatever. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that is a really, now that you say that, that is something that I really think about. We're going to go visit my wife's friend had a baby in Spokane over the weekend, and then we're going to have to kind of do the quarantine thing. And I'm really curious even just to go to Spokane, because I have not left the Seattle bubble. I mean, I haven't left my house really, since March. And I'll just even be curious to seeing that different mentality of just going across the state and just seeing, I just have no idea what that's even going to be like.
It's different even just looking. So I live right where Snohomish County becomes Snohomish County. And then, so with King right below us. And it's interesting how I can do a portrait session at a park in Linwood and then a portrait session, at Gasworks. And the vibe is so different. And the mask quantity is so different. Yet we're like 10 miles from each other. So the viral load has to be similar. But anyway.
Well, they've said on the NFL with all the testing and stuff, they've said that there has been not a lot of reports of the COVID. It's all been like internally within the teams and not necessarily happening on the field. So maybe it's the same thing. Maybe the virus knows not to cross county lines. It just knows, that it's not.
I'm sure there are plenty.
Yeah, the game's going on. We can't spread now.
Alan, hop in here. What do you think about this?
Well, I go back to what Annemarie was saying very early on about how it's important for couples to get real, and so that's an opportunity to get in some depth about your priorities. Mm-hmm. Are you okay having a small ceremony right now? Is that going to help you feel married, help you get insurance, help you with whatever else you want? Is it more important to you to have a wedding that's bigger and all self-contained? That there has been some denial, I think, on the part of some couples, as you mentioned with the one you were describing for next summer, Annemarie. Like, we might not have 175 people next year, but I think for couples, it's a great time to do just a personal reckoning. Yeah. What are my values? What am I willing to accept? What do I really want to do? And that is hard. But I mean, wedding planning was already hard. There's just so many decisions that have to be made that to throw this on top of everything makes it a challenging process. But hopefully, to my mind, it's one that a couple comes out of stronger and better able to communicate and better able to make decisions together.
It's really funny, but Jenny, some of the photos that you've taken at some of our recent weddings, my most favorite photos that are up on my bulletin board are the ones where I'm in a mask with the couple, making funny faces or funny arm movements. I just look at these photos, Alan, they're up on the bulletin board, and Jenny, I just love them. And I will always remember this. It's part of my story. It's part of your story. It's all of our stories. But there is fear. There's anxiety. I have trepidation walking into every wedding situation, not really knowing what am I walking into? Are people adhering to social distancing guidelines? Are they kind of middle of the road? Are they kind of not? I've talked to a number of vendors and it's all over the map right now, but the majority of them are very gracious and are stepping up and doing what they need to do because that's the kind of couples that we get. But this is a really crazy time. And as you said, Alan, there's like a reckoning part of it, right? It's kind of like there's a difference between the wedding and the marriage. And if you can use the wedding planning, whatever that looks like, right, to deepen your bond, understand how you come to profound disappointment. There are going to be times in every relationship, all of us are in, longer term relationships where we're going to know sacrifice and profound disappointment. And we're going to have to sit and go, ooh, this is just happening at the very beginning before a couple's married. And this is throwing everything out of whack.
Well, and true, Alan, you just were talking about how, with that reckoning, couples having to think about what's important to them. And Anne-Marie mentioned the age ranges earlier, and it seems to me that for most weddings, it's not really about just what the couple's wanting. Like they're planning with all the input from their respective families and what the expectation is for a wedding. And I mean, weddings have always been about gathering everyone in your tribe or in your community or in your group. And so it does separate. I think the people that get married, regardless, they are really at the helm of their experience versus it being, to appease family and make it be what family's hoping for or expecting or whatever. That's what I thought when you were mentioning about, it would be amazing if it was just across the board with wedding planning. It'd be amazing if it was just what the couple wanted. I'm always telling my couples that, as soon as you get engaged, everyone just starts shoulding on you, shouldn't you do this and shouldn't you do that? And you just get should on left and right. And I think that this has been an opportunity to step back and actually take, inventory of what is important to you and why you're having a wedding in the first place.
It was so interesting. We just had one of our couples that got married in September, and it was another kind of long time. They had just booked a really long time ago, and I'm like, wow, a Sunday in September, awesome! Like let's
simple.
Let's put it on the calendar. But so she had just posted yesterday was their 1 month anniversary, and Courtney, this bride, had just a really easygoing demeanor, right? I mean, we talked just kind of on email and then obviously back and forth with all this going on. And then when she posted yesterday, her did a little Instagram and some photos from her photographer and had posted, hey, this is our 1 month, we're so excited. Was it the wedding we wanted? Like, like we did the best we could. We had 30 of our closest friends here. We had a great day. Like it was just the tone in which she wrote it. I'm just so easygoing and just so kind of like grateful just that she was able to have have the family that she could have there, have the friends that she could have there. We did everything, it was 100% by the rules. It was at Rebecca's venue up in Twin Willows. So, it was like real by the book. But I just thought that is the way to look at it. And it's not to kind of lament like, well, wish we could have had 200 people here. But it was, look at what we did get to have here. Look at what we got to have. She and her husband, they had been together for like 10 years. They met when they were like 14. I mean, they've been together forever. And I'm like, man, that is how everybody needs to try to look at these things, is to be a little bit more just what could we do and being appreciative of that and not lamenting kind of what, but Annemarie, how do you deal? I mean, you work with couples through this and like how, that was one of our questions, was kind of like working through despair, ignoring feelings of despair, working through all that. So how do we get to that point so everyone could be like Courtney?
I think it comes down to remembering why you're getting married. A wedding is just a container to celebrate a commitment and a relationship and to bring this tribe of people together. At the end of the day, this is about two people who love each other and are saying, I choose you. I choose you for everything I know and everything I don't know. And right now we are living in this massive container of I don't know. And you made a very good point, Reed, in that small is good. Medium size is good. If you can have 2 people or 10 people or 30 people or 50 people at a wedding, what are you bitching about? That's pretty awesome. And Jenny, as you said, people are recalibrating how they're going to have grandma or Uncle Bill or whatnot, or a bunch of college friends on the live stream. They're just going to make it different. And maybe that's what we need to look at for 2021, that it is still going to be different. And you can still be married in a beautiful way with beautiful wedding vendors around you who are super, super happy to be with you, and just do it differently. That's what I would just say. Feel the disappointment, allow it to be okay, and then look at the person next to you with such gratitude that you're going to share life with this person and reframe it and make the plans accordingly so you don't create more disappointment for next year. Make the plans smart.
Yeah,
That
I think like,
optimism,
I'll go ahead, Alan. Sorry.
that optimism is why people love Annemarie. Um, I think both of you are saying a similar thing, that it's great to look on the bright side and be excited about what you can do. I would add that that can be a tough journey for people. For some people, they have gone to weddings that are big celebrations, and that's what they've always had in their mind. And I was thinking earlier today, well, how does somebody who's in that mindset adjust to what is? And I feel like it's harder because you don't have that many peers. You can't really call up your friend who got married in 2017 and had the wedding they wanted and say, oh, I'm so discouraged because I can't do this or can't do that. And so I feel like trying to find other couples who are going through what you're going through can be key to that, because there's an immediate empathy there. When my son was born, he had a condition that required surgery, and we were in the hospital for about 9 weeks every day. And there was just, parents would just look at each other. We didn't even have to tell each other any stories. We just had this commonality. Yeah, well, we're here at Children's. And I feel like those people who are 2020 couples can have that too. So find peers, find people who will listen to you. Hopefully you've got a vendor team of people who are empathetic, who will be willing to share their experience with you. And to me, having those conversations can potentially help you get to where you are happy and satisfied with whatever you are able to do.
It's hard though, and I know we when Dorothy and I got married, her friend got married the week before, and we had kind of planned it that way because they had a lot of friends that were coming into town, and so we had just kind of planned everyone could just come into town kind of for that week and a half or whatever thing. And even going to to that wedding, and it's really hard, right? If you've had someone else that's gotten married, because I do agree with Alan, you want to find people you can grieve with, but then you also need to really be able to be happy with what to not like feel bad if you did or didn't have something that somebody else had, right? Or to like judge it off of that. I know, Jenny, we had Haley's wedding, right? Haley and John at Moroni Meadows. And then I was just fortunate enough. Jamie had also booked me to do their video. These two sisters got married a week and a half or 2 weeks apart this last summer. I sympathize for their father, that they had these two. But the whole time I'm sitting at both of these weddings and I'm thinking, is this really awkward? Are they looking at everything? Are they right? Did they plan these? Like, what is going on here? What is the dynamic? And it wasn't at all. They both knew what they wanted. It was totally separate. They totally had an idea of what they wanted. And one was at, Moroni Meadows that was totally different. And one was a little more sophisticated. And they were totally different. And it's okay to have that. It's okay to have your wedding and have it be, different and not the same as whatever else, and really own what you have and really be proud of that. And this is just another circumstance with COVID, and there'll be something else in another 10 years maybe that's obviously hopefully not as bad, but something that you're going to have to work through stuff no matter when you get married.
Yeah, I love a wedding. I love the small ones, the medium sized, the large ones. It's been really interesting over the 18 years I've been doing this, is that the weddings have grown in size, in scope. And I think this is a really good opportunity and a really good determination to say, all right, let's do some adjustments here. And that bigger isn't necessarily better. One of the things that I hear from couples, I'm lining everybody up, and Jenny might be there, and I'm motioning to Alan about the mic and whatnot, but you have a processional order. You have everybody lined up, right? And the number one thing I hear from a bride or the groom as I'm checking in with everybody is we're ready to go, to get their approval that we're ready to go. I'm talking usually a wedding from 50 to maybe 300 people. I will hear this more than I can tell you. I just want to get this done. I am so tired of waiting for this moment. I just want to get married. I just want to get married. And maybe that's what this is. Let's just get you married. And we can figure out all the pieces, but do it reliably in 2021 bite-sized pieces that are going to fit on the chessboard, so you don't have to skew to the side of postponing again or disappointment. That everything you're building into your wedding planning is to proof against that and to make reliable, smart choices for 2021.
One fear that I have, and I'd be curious to hear all three of your guys' thoughts on this, is my fear, and I would want, like what Annemarie says, to be able to kind of reframe what we want, focus on these things. My fear is people really are just waiting for the curtain to open again, and then it's like back to 300 people weddings, right? Like it's just back, that people, it's like you're injured and you're waiting, and then it's like the second it goes, you're going to go again. And there's not learning isn't the right word, but there is no reframing during this kind of like during the off season, right? It's just, well, the second we can do it again, we want to do it. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that a lot of couples are thinking that way, or what do you think? And Alan, you seem very intently thinking about something.
I was thinking about what you were saying. It is an interesting theory. I think people have a lot of time to consider what's happening, because this has already been going on for longer than anybody could have predicted.
Yeah.
And for most of those people who moved to the summer of 2021, that's 8 months away or 9 months away or what have you. There's going to be plenty of time to integrate the thoughts and the values that you might have. So I don't know, Reed. I'm not sure I see couples just pushing the door to beat it down. I think there will be a time where we all feel like there's a consensus that we're mostly over it. But that time, who knows when that will be? Hopefully soon.
Well, just because my question is, just because there's time to reflect before 2021 summer, is that, just because we have the time, are we going to do that reflection?
I think so, because I feel like people are not going to pressure their friends. Family is not going to pressure their friends to go big. Like as your year goes on, everyone is going to say to you, you know what, you can have a terrific small ceremony, or you can have a fine reception if the limitations are this. I don't think there's going to be too many cheerleaders for, I don't care, as long as it's legal, I'm going to have my 300 people.
To ask one more follow-up before we move on, but when you say that, when you say like there'll be somebody that'll say you'll have a fine small ceremony, there still is that, even when and I know you're Mr. Optimistic, but it's even with that, there is still, you're okay. It still is settling, kind of the way that even you phrase it. Right? Because we in our culture expect in 2019 that a 200 person or a 150 person. Dorothy and I had, I think, 115, but that it would. But even when even when you say that, you say, well, you could have a fine small ceremony.
Maybe the possibility is this: I kind of live by a paradox, and my paradox is wherever I start to get kind of pissy or moany or kind of out of sorts, I kind of bring myself back and go, you know what, Annemarie? Here's the paradox. The paradox is, what's small is big, what's big is small. I live by this paradox. So if I have a small problem, it's big. And a lot of my big problems really aren't that big. So small weddings, big weddings, it's the attitude, it's the feeling. People want the feeling of that day, of those moments, no matter if they have 5 people, 50 people, or 100 people. They want the feeling, and they want great people around them, and they want no crazy, and they want limited drama, because a wedding does have some drama. They want it to feel them. And they're just going to, as you say, have to adjust. And they're doing it. But some I know are not being real. Like the one couple with 150 whatever people on this enclosed space. I don't, you can't plan for that because they're going to be disappointed potentially. I don't know. And maybe I'm not even thinking right. But I would just caution and say, work within the parameters that are here now, and you can always embellish and build it out more. And that's even more joyful.
Alan, I wanted to let you follow up on my question, and then we'll go to Jenny. Just if you had any other follow up on that.
Yes, I can agree with you that I sound like that's settling. But what I would point out, to me, a comparable situation is when it rains, right? Like you've envisioned all this whole day, and you're going to get married in this field with this altar, and all of a sudden you're inside. And it's not worse. It's different. And if you have a positive attitude about it, then it will be fine and it will be memorable.
Yeah.
You know, so many couples had been targeting 10, 10, 20 as their wedding date. And I had a delightful couple on Saturday, Maddie and Matthew. And, you know, when I chatted with them at the rehearsal on Thursday, they were like, yeah, it's going to be thunderstorms. So we're all, you know, we're going to come in. And they had a great ceremony and a great day. And we did the things that were legal to do. They were happy as can be. They shared it with 25, 26 of the important people to them. So I think it is a lot about the attitude.
Jenny, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that attitude is kind of everything when it comes to, I mean, any decision you're making, because you're going to come up against all these questions. I would just say, in general, when someone comes at me with a, would this be good? Would this be bad? I just tell them, you know, tell me what you want to see. So like in regards to images, I say, you know, when all is said and done and somebody who couldn't come to your wedding is going to sit down and look at your photos, what is it you want them to see? And let's make decisions based on that. You know, if it was about, you know, not even just the visual, but just like what feeling, you know, do you want it to be warm and intimate and close? Do you want it to seem like a big party? Like what, you know, and I think you can ask yourself those questions in regards to your planning as well. At some point, you have to be willing to have things sifted through enough that if it came down to on the wedding day, you have a huge thunderstorm and lightning or whatever, you have all these things that can happen with or without COVID, you know, and how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to approach that? You know, if you're a negative person, then you know, you might experience that as a huge thing, as a huge negative thing. But, you know, I remember a couple years ago, I had a wedding over on Whitby, and it was that August when we had that crazy windstorm and all the trees came down and there was no power. There was no generator. There was no nothing. But the wedding was awesome because the couple and the family was like, dude, what a story. Let's party, you know? And so, I mean, I think that's kind of the takeaway in life is, are you going to make lemonade or are you going to, you know, suck lemons?
I do think that Jenny, I do think that among many superpowers that you have, I do think that one you have is when you have a couple, you know, and it goes for everything. I mean, obviously you're looking at it from them getting good photos, but part of it too is just, you know, the mood of how they are on the wedding day, right? Because you want to be in that mood, and they could, you know, they could ask anything in the world. And it could be like, well, should I have my hand like this but whatever it is, you know, you make them feel good about it, right? Because you know that if they feel good about everything, then they're going to look better, but also they're just going to have a better wedding day because they're going to remember like, yeah, man, I feel great. And it goes, like I said, beyond just having the photos of just, you know, that whole mentality across the day, right? Of having that feeling of confidence of like, you know, this is going to be good, whether it's thunderstorms, like Alan said, we got to move, you know, we're going to have it be good. And I think so much of it is that across the board. And like I've said, not lamenting, anything, but really embracing what we have. So I am going to wrap this up pretty soon. Rosie is about to break the door down for her dinner. I don't know if anybody has heard her whining literally since we started recording. I don't even know when, an hour ago. But this is not an easy topic to quantify, to answer, right? There's no big, okay, I'm going to take these 3 things today and go home and do something about it. But what do we want to leave people with today with this, discussion? What is, and whether it's kind of a mental checklist or a positive note or something, what do we want to leave people with today? Alan, let's start with you.
Well, I guess what I would say is that in the big picture, it is going to be fine. It may not be what you want. It may not be when you want. It may not be with who you want. But in the end, you're going to get married to somebody that you love, and you're going to get to start your life together. And so if you keep that as the end goal, hopefully the rest of it will all come into play and come into perspective, or some cliche.
Jenny, what about you?
Well, and I guess it would depend on who I'm talking to. As a vendor, I have to say having these kinds of conversations always make me feel better, only because it helps me realize that my reality is actually somewhat parallel with others. Because there's been a lot of, during this whole time, I've had a lot of moments where I stop and I'm like, am I being punked? Like, is this real? Like, cause I'll go places and it won't seem like it's impacting, or, you know what I mean? I had a wedding, that I did just a couple weeks ago, and I was taken aback at how few people were distancing, wearing masks, how many of the older folk were hugging and kissing on the younger folk. I was really surprised by it. And I had this moment of like, am I crazy? Like, is this? And so I have to say, I really appreciate having that connection with other vendors. As far as my couples go, I think that the takeaway would be really involve your vendors. Don't think that your vendors are just, ask them what they've seen. Ask them what they've seen that's worked. Ask them what they've seen that maybe hasn't worked so great. I have, I've only maybe, done a 10 or so, but I will say, at least from my experience with watching their Zooms and seeing what people are saying on that end and, helping troubleshoot going forward. But ultimately, I think the takeaway would be, to talk and open up your periphery, because what you originally deemed as the end goal of your wedding, it doesn't have to be less than. It could just be a reframing. If you look at the whole situation, if you back it up and come at it from a bunch of different directions, and some people just end up figuring out, let's elope, because really it's not about having a bunch of people. For those couples that the people being present is what's paramount, then by all means, let's set it up. Like I was saying earlier, do 60 people outdoors instead of, trying to do it inside or whatever, just having a different way of handling the COVID problem.
To hop in real quick before Annemarie, sorry. I will just say for the record, I've talked to Dorothy about this in the last week, because I know that we just had our, Alan was just on the other podcast about the, doing the elopement and then the wedding, later on, and what's that going to look like. And as someone I've said, just do it now and whatever. Dorothy, my wife, absolutely, we would have waited. We would have done it. Having the people there is paramount, right? So as much as I talk about everything and act like I'm the big expert and, well, this is the way that we would do it, that is absolutely what she would have done, because more than anything else, that is what is most important to her, is to have everybody there. So I just want to say that, and that's my wife, and I've, asked her, and she goes, that is what we would have done, because that is what's most important. So I just wanted to hop in with that. Annemarie, please take us home.
I would say, to jump on Jenny, something that you said about the reframing that we talked about several times here, is that why do you just have to have one wedding? A wedding is a celebration. And maybe this is a time where you have multiple celebrations on the road to celebrating your relationship. I would say, first and foremost, plan in 2021 something that's doable at this point, and then embellish it and build it out as the restrictions perhaps come off. And then there's joy in saying, okay, we can have another 20 people or 30 people, or we could do this, so we don't have to do that, where it becomes more exciting and more embellished. But don't start out, woo, and then have to bring it down like this to a funnel. That is crazy. The other thing is too, is that I have couples who are saying, you know what? We're just not going to get married once. We're going to do a small wedding. Then we're going to do a renewal with this group. And then we're going to go over here and have a party with that group. It's like a year of celebration. So it's just looking at this and going, we're getting married. We have each other. As Alan said, you're marrying the sweetheart that you're going to walk life with. And know that anything you do on the way to that marriage that celebrates the two of you, the couple, is all good. It's all good.
It's all good. And that's a great place to end it. I want to thank you guys so much again. You know, I know it's just, the goal of this is to just have conversations, right? And I think you all get that. And I know that there's just been a lot of just good stuff to come out of this, you know, and each week's kind of different, but I think having, you know, conversations like this and touching on topics is, I think, important, you know, no matter what what comes out of it. So I really appreciate everybody taking the time today, and we'll have another episode next week. Thank you guys so much.
Good luck, Rosie.